Hi everyone. Really excited to have you all join our very first Graphwise Talk edition. My name is Polina. I'm the web manager here at Graphwise. And before we dive in, I would like to share a few housekeeping notes with you. So first of all, we're introducing today a new format. This is a conversation first format event shaped by the questions you submitted before. So thank you so much for your active participation. During the live session, we still have the floor open for your questions, so please do submit them at any time in the Q&A box. We will try to do our best to cover as many of them as we can. Also, make sure you check the resource section. This is the place for you to connect with our speakers and also explore some useful links we have prepared for you there. Today, our conversation spans across multiple topics, but I would like just to highlight the overall structure. So we will start with sharing real stories from the field, what AI challenges we are observing companies are facing today, and what does that state of the art really looks like in practice. Then we'd go to the maturity roadmap. Here we would like to equip you with some exact steps your organization needs to take to successfully navigate the journey towards smarter agentic AI orchestration. And we will end up with a more philosophic reflection about humans. So where are the people in the story and how new AI workflows are reshaping the way we work and where humans truly fit in. With that said, I'm really happy to introduce you to our hosts, Alan Morrison, Graph Curator and Advisor in Knowledge Graphs, who will moderate and lead today's conversation, alongside Gerald Mann, VP of Pre-Sales and Graphwise, and Andreas Blomauer, SVP of Growth and co-founder at Graphwise. With that said, I'm handing this over to our speakers, and let's get it started.
Well, thank you, Paulina. And hey, everybody. Thanks for joining today. We're talking about agentic orchestration to begin with. And the reason that we chose this topic is because there's a lot of buzz behind it. There's a lot going on with the agentic paradigm, and companies are grasping at straws, trying to figure out how to adapt so that they've got an agentic workflow. And so, if you've been in and around IT for decades, as I have, you've seen this cycle over and over again where the software companies get into a new mode and they're adapting their old functionality to meet the new paradigm. That's nothing new. But what really is new this time around is that the architecture really has to shift. We really have to go from an application-centric approach where you've got hundreds of applications that enterprises subscribe to, and if not thousands, and each application has its own database and data model. And you've got these connectors that allegedly integrate them, but that's not sufficient integration for an agent approach. Agents need to know who, what, when, where, and why. They need to understand in ways that humans do so they can help humans. Agents are basically doing our bidding. And so Graphwise is one of the few companies that I've come across that really takes this human first, data-centric approach to putting the knowledge in the middle here so that you've got explicit knowledge that's guiding the agents. And that's why it's so powerful in an agentic context and why we're talking about Graphwise as an agentic AI solution. And I'm the Graph curator, so I talk about RAG a lot, augmented generation. And basically a Graphwise product, for example, GraphRag, has this LLM in the mix, certainly for interpretation purposes. But the LLM is using tools like query language, like Sparkle, for example, and a graph database like GraphDB to retrieve facts and rules so that agents have an accurate picture of the context that they're working within, because agents are always working in a context. So, if you think about this whole agentic orchestration, I think the the software industry writ large has the cart before the horse again. They're not really focused on the data inputs to the AI, and the data inputs determine the shape of the AI. And so, Graphwise, for example, is one of these companies that's going to help its customers really put the horse before the cart where it should be. And if you think about what Cisco was talking about, they recently released this customer survey where they were asking their customers, well, are you using agents? And 85% of the customers said, yeah, we're using agents in experiments. We're experimenting with agents. But only 5% said they're actually using agents in production. So why is that? Only 5% of all those customers surveyed are using agents in production. And the reason is trust. And this whole conversation revolves around trust and reliability, how to make your systems more accurate so that the agents can operate on your behalf. And so it's wonderful to have Gerald and Andreas on with us. And Gerald, we were going to start this discussion by talking about AI and how AI, there's different definitions of AI to begin with. When you're talking with customers, they've got a certain orientation to AI, don't they? And maybe you could talk about that and how you sort of shape their view of things, considering what I've just about.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Alan, and that's really where we kind of put the epicenter of our focus with our customers is it's still questions about the business, right? It's yes, this is a different way of approaching the business questions, but at the end of the day, we still need to be able to go through and answer the business questions with exactly what you said. We have to focus on trust and reliability, and part of the problems that agents are not able to make it to production is because of the trust and reliability are not there, right? Without a semantic backbone, you don't have the domain knowledge to be able to go through and trust the answers that are coming through. We've worked with several different organizations. One, a large pharmaceutical company who the goal is to enhance their RAG, as you mentioned before, with combining GraphRag with large language models to be able to leverage all of their data to ground and bring accurate responses, which reduces the amount of time to get the answers from hours or days down to minutes, right? And there's a trust and there's a grounding of that data that happens by going through and doing GraphRag by having a semantic backbone like they're using with GraphRag. Another customer that we worked with is a large industrial gas compressor organization. Very similarly, they needed very particular answers. Imagine a service technician going out in the field and having to guess whether the answer they're getting is actually the right part number or the right way to fix that. Right? When you go through and you have very important business questions that are required to be able to go through and keep your customers and retain your customers, have a positive customer response, being able to make sure that the answers you're getting from these agents is vital to that success. And in this one specific example with this gas compressor, we actually had somebody go through and look at the answers from a human to an LLM to GraphRag, and the GraphRag was more than 2 times as accurate as the LLM directly on its own because it was grounded in the domain knowledge itself. And then a third customer that's going through and we're working with is a large banking organization, and very similar. They needed to be able to go through and trust the responses that they wanted to go through and use. So they had to go through and build a system that first extracted the key concepts, relevant terms, to be able to go through and bring their domain to the LLM. And then they also built a feedback loop. So as people were going through and using it, it went through and continued to refine the semantic layer to make it more and more accurate, which continuously improved the tagging and classification answers without a heavy reliance on technical teams. You need to be able to go through and focus on the business questions where the business questions are being answered.